the weekly breakdown now with Rob Bolton, our betting, fantasy, gaming, just golf expert in general. A man who never sleeps, man who's constantly updating our fields, our injuries, our just whatever we need done, Rob Bolton does. And right now, for this next 15 minutes, that's to talk Genesis Scottish Open and a little bit of ISCO. Rob, how are we doing today?
Thanks for the setup there, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anything to keep the job secure. That's the whole idea. It's an extraordinary and unusual couple of weeks we have ahead of us right now. I mean, 2 consecutive doubleheaders. They've done this before. For fans, it's the best. For those in the industry, look forward to the rest of the season after this. To be honest with you, it's not quite like the cicadas that don't return every 17 years, but it's going to be a long 2 weeks before I see my family again. So we're all in the same boat. But the fact that we get to dive into these fields, all of them are 156 deep. It's a joy, man. It's a treat. There's a lot to cover, so let's get going on it.
Well, I knew you'd be grinding ISCO Championship tape, so that makes one of us, I would say. I know my way around, but we'll lean heavily on Rob for that section. We're going to start though across the pond at the Genesis Scottish Open, the Renaissance Club. Rory McIlroy, the defending champion, obviously won in dramatic fashion last year. Those 2 shots coming down the stretch at 17 and 18. I think I read something today. He had about a 0.2% chance to win. When he stood on that tee box. Just remarkable that he was able to birdie those holes in those conditions, capped by that stinger that now has a plaque in the 18th fairway. And McIlroy is, again, the story this week, Rob. Maybe not for his defending championship reasons, but rather this is the first time we've seen him since that, you can only call it disastrous finish at the U.S. Open that kept him from that elusive major number 5. He spoke today. Seemed at peace with some of it, but obviously we don't quite know where his game is at. What are you expecting from Rory, who is the favorite this week in the betting odds, which I guess I was surprised a bit about just based on kind of everything that's transpired with him, but maybe in a sense I'm not, because it's Rory McIlroy. So where do you net out on all things Rory?
I think the inverse of that chance is where he was at the U.S. Open late, right? Instead of 0.2%, it might have been like 99.8% to win the thing. Yeah. That's being a professional athlete. You're not a winner until you're a winner, and it ain't over till it's over and all of that. I think a younger Rory McIlroy, it probably would have hurt more. I mean, the guy is in his prime. He's fully formed. He has a balanced life. He's undergone a lot publicly in the last 2 years. Roughly, and he's come out from it the other side. You know, Will Gray made a great point this week in the roundtable that he tends to win a lot of the weeks before majors. This is a week before the Open Championship. Rory McIlroy's focus is straight ahead. What's happened has happened. He's flushed it. It's been 3 weeks, 4 weeks now, whatever it is, and he's flushed it. He's top of the power rankings. There was no doubt about that. He's the top of the betting board at 8-1 to win, as you and I are speaking at BetMGM. That's not surprising in the context of the fact that BetMGM wants to stay in business. If he was, let's say, 20-1, they wouldn't have enough in the vault to pay the bets. From a betting perspective, if you're looking to get into a guy who's coming off that sting and you're hearing all the rhetoric, and for some reason you think there's merit to it because everybody's talking about it. Hey, that's just sports. It's what we do as fans. Like, that's the compelling story right now with Rory McIlroy. As soon as he goes up and hangs up a 69 or a 68 in the opening round, that'll be ancient news because he'll have turned the page, proving us that he's already flushed it. So the fact that we can get on board now at 8-1 makes a lot of sense because after an opening 68 or so, he'll be much shorter than that to win the thing and defend his title at the Renaissance. Thank you for reminding me the pronunciation of that.
I know.
I'm glad you came out ahead of that.
No, it's Renaissance. You got to really emphasize that Renaissance.
Renaissance. There we go.
No, I mean, you're much more of the betting mind than I am, but I'm kind of approaching Rory just as I'm thinking about his week, not from a betting perspective, just kind of cautiously, just to see how it goes. So maybe you can get that better value right now, but I almost wonder if because of the long drop off and because it was such an emotional time, if it's not worth kind of waiting and then maybe you do live bet, but at least you have a little bit more confidence of where he's at. But it was interesting to hear you say that the 8-1 number is kind of a respectable number. I was going to ask if that's a bit too steep with kind of maybe the uncertainty we have surrounding him, but sounds like that's not, too rich for you at that point right now.
Yeah, I think if he was, let's say, Jordan Spieth, who's been scuffling, and he was that low as the defending champion, you wouldn't bother to invest even a fraction of a unit in that. It doesn't make any sense. Rory, you do. Look, what happened in plain sight at the U.S. Open was unfortunate, but it's probably going to happen again. He's had a lot of disappointment in his career. He said so today that he's just thankful to do what he gets to do. His perspective is exactly where you want it to be if you're thinking about an investment. Full stop.
Rory's gotten to me, this is non-betting, but just to the point of I don't even really care what happens the 3 days of any tournament at this point. A couple years ago in majors, we were worried about the starts he's getting off to. I think the last few years, back-to-back U.S. Opens, Open at St. Andrews, even some of the Masters appearances. I'm not quite really worried about him stumbling off the gates. That's obviously still something that could happen, but I'm now wondering, what does it look like the next time he gets in contention on a back nine? Because we saw all the putts that should have dropped, pretty much did drop up until that 16th hole. Then he's got obviously 16 and 18, but up till that point, pretty much everything that hadn't gone right in those final rounds did go right for him in that moment, which is why I think so many people thought this was going to be the time. He's holing putts on the first hole. He's holing long 30-footers at big times to keep the momentum. That just didn't happen. So it's kind of boring because you want to be invested in every day of golf. But for Rory, I truly don't know how much I can glean about his form until he's back in contention on a back nine. And we see him when some of that scar tissue could pop up, because I just don't see it really popping up on a Thursday, Friday of a regular tournament or a major. It feels like one of those things where we're really not going to know how this has affected him until he's truly back in the cauldron in one of these big tournaments way, way down the stretch.
I just think my final thought on that would be, he's so good. He's almost given himself these challenges over time, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, because he's looking for something maybe greater than what's directly ahead of him. And that's probably a deficiency as it pertains to his career and the record. But if this is the way he's having at it, it's like when a guy is just won a major and then he changes his swing, almost like mad geniuses, like they just don't see it the way the rest of us see it. And I respect that. It's just from our perspective, the only thing we can control is our investment. And so if you're not, look, I hear you totally. And if you're not in love with chasing Rory McIlroy at 8-1, retreat to a top 5. You're still going to be plus value for that at the top of that board. Nothing wrong with that. And in a field like this, I mean, there's going to be a lot of value down board, especially in the DP World Tour players that are, basically 1/5 of this field, or about what is it? It's fifth, about a fifth of the field.
Yeah, they get 75 spots. Yeah, 75 spots in the event go to DP World Tour members, plus a couple sponsor exemptions. So it works out pretty much to half and half. So yeah, American fans at least won't know some of those names maybe down at the bottom of the board, but maybe that's exactly the spot that you find some value. A couple Euro guys are in your power rankings, in your top 15. Tom McKibben, Ewan Ferguson. Kind of take me through how you went about trying to slot some of those top DP World Tour guys against tour players when they just really don't match up, but we're going over to a course that should maybe suit that style of golf that they play more often on a week-to-week basis.
So the PGA Tour players' commitments this week is perhaps not as robust as maybe a fan who would expect it to be, given that we're a week ahead of the major. Might as well go for 2 weeks if you're in the Open Championship. And it's just not the case. A lot of guys are resting. A lot of guys don't want to be beaten up in this week in advance of the major, and that's all fair. So there's a little more elbow room for some of the DP World Tour guys to sneak into the top 15. And yeah, Ewan Ferguson at 13 and Tom McKibben at 15. Ferguson is he's in the best place of any DP World Tour member at the moment. He's from Scotland. He's atop the race to Dubai at 16th among his countrymen. Just won the BMW International Open that got him into the Open Championship. This is like everything is green light for this guy. All arrows pointed at him, converging trends multiplied. I understand the negative of that as well, but as it pertains to the power rankings, as it pertains to his trajectory right now, there's a lot of positive to it, and he wants to retain the momentum. So you and Ferguson made a lot of sense to sneak in there. So in terms of a betting thing, maybe a top 20. Look at that market, be conservative, reach for a top 10 if you'd like. That's where I would land with him. And Tom McKibben's sort of been one of the more sexy players on the DP World Tour in the last few months. No secret to anybody who's watching golf or avid fans, that sort of thing. But he's from Northern Ireland. We don't know a lot about him over here. Yet his form is strong, and eighth in the race to Dubai at the moment. 4 top 10s, last 5 non-majors. That's really strong, and this is his home circuit. So again, you expect a guy like that, no matter the fact that half the field is PGA Tour caliber, he should play up into it because of the momentum he has, and they're on his turf now. So a little more of a stronger angle for him. I like a top 10 for Tom McKibben, even though he's 2 slots lower in the power rankings. Ferguson's momentum's just a little bit stronger at the moment.
Yeah, and if Rob, you put out sleeper picks every week, and that article that went out yesterday is kind of littered with a few of those Euros. You got Jordan Smith as your outright. I think if I'm reading the odds right, that's 125 to 1 at the time we published that. Callum Hill plus 550 for a top 20. Alexander Bjork plus 240 for a top 40. Is there any one of those 3 in particular that kind of really stuck out to you as you kind of went down the board of things you liked?
I love Jordan Smith. This guy, there's so much that he has done that we haven't. He's sort of lurking in terms of the PGA Tour fans' consciousness. And so while Minwoo Lee at 5 to 1 for top 5 may have been smarter at, say, like 66 to 1 as an outright, I like Minwoo Lee to pay off the top 5, and I like the reach for Jordan Smith at that value, basically double, to win the thing. None of the outrights and sleepers have won. So my expectations are basically 0 for that to happen. But I want the attention to this guy. He's going to play next week as well. This is important that we see that the fact that we get a chance to see this guy. And what I've prefaced in that section for him was that you have Rory McIlroy, currently now 8 to 1. He's actually stretched a little longer from the 7.5 to 1 to win. And Xander Schauffele, who is now live 9 to 1, so he was 8 to 1 when I wrote the sleepers. As both of those guys have stretched, there's so much value deeper on the board. This is a Scotty Scheffler less field. We look forward to Scheffler returning next week and devoting a unit to him to win. That's next week, but this week we don't have to necessarily lean into a couple of guys. It's just basically a wide open field minus those 2 guys that I mentioned, McIlroy and Schauffele. As Smith presents as a guy who can fulfill the strong angle among the subset of DP World Tour members who are who have that profile upon entry. So he would be the guy. But I mean, from a betting perspective, Alexander Bjork for top 40 at plus 240, I was surprised. He has 3 top 40s. He's 5 for 5 in this tournament. 3 top 40s on this course. It hasn't really worked out for him as a PGA Tour rookie this year, so he may not be returning to the PGA Tour. We'll see how it goes. It's a week-to-week thing for him, but he's a home circuit guy on the DP World Tour, and he played well in his last event at the Scandinavian Mix. So this is a good time for him to continue that momentum and then be at home. So plus 240 is basically stealing that.
Yeah. Higher up the board, Tom Kim is 3rd in your power rankings. If you look at the odds, right? Did I get that right? You gave me a little look there. I think he's 3rd.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I want to make sure I was right. 3rd in the power rankings, but as you look down the betting odds, he's 6th or 7th. So that's just a marginal shift, but maybe you're a bit higher on Tom Kim than the general markets would be. What has you confident? Because I'm also confident. Spoiler alert. I like Tom this week. Why did you put him up at 3, right behind Rory and Xander there?
Yeah, so it's the first time I'm looking at where he is on the betting board to win 25 to 1 as we're speaking, BetMGM. So yes, 7th. Yeah, 7th by himself. I think it's just a matter of look, the market's going to be the market, and other guys shorter than him are going to gather a little more attention as world beaters. Tom Kim, he let us know who he was 2 years ago on this course as a non-member. I had him for a top 10 that week. He was like, I don't know, 11 to 1 or something for a top 10. And Like, yep, I kind of expected it, just the way his trajectory was headed, playing abroad. And aggressive player, but still it's smart. And now he's 2 years on, and he's coming in with load of steam with the last 5 events. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for him to be number 3 in the power rankings, given this momentum. And, there's also something as we go into the season this deeply that I kind of like, that it doesn't really have a quantitative presence, but it's guys who have not yet won this season. There's an additional motivating factor. Guys who've already checked that box, they're chasing other things. Obviously, they're chasing another victory, but it's like, I got one. There's that a little bit. Now, maybe there's nothing to that, but for me there is, because 0 is still 0. And all these guys want to win every week. And also, just for the record, I don't look at the betting board until, like I told you right now, as it concerns like Tom Kim's, the work is within the purity and the independence of my process until I get a little bit further into the week, like with sleepers. Didn't have to look at Tom Kim for sleepers because he's in power rankings. So,
maybe there's a bit of value there, if you're just slightly higher, that maybe that presents a little bit of value. And I think, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember where he was Rocket Mortgage Week, but I feel like maybe that scared a couple people off. I mean, he played 9 weeks in a row. That was the 9th week.
He missed
the cut. And that was just after an emotional Travelers. That a lot happened there on Sunday, going and trying to beat Scotty. And I mean, he played as well as you could up against someone like Scotty, beat everyone but Scotty. So it feels like almost if he hadn't played Rocket Mortgage, maybe he's slightly higher in some people's minds, but I don't really take much into that week, just coming off of how emotional that was, and now getting a week to rest and going to a course that he clearly has had some success on. That feels like the exact recipe that you'd want. Plus, he hasn't won. All the factors that you've kind of thrown in there has me bullish for where he is among the market, and also kind of makes sense where he is in your power rankings.
Good. Look, I said this in my my introductory column in January of 2010 at PGATour.com. Very last sentence, which was, it's not my job for you to agree with me. It's my job for you to make a decision. And if you happen to agree, great. But if you happen to disagree and you get paid off, even better. That's the whole point. It's not about me. It's about you. The fact that Tom Kim presents so strongly, and you like the fact that he makes sense for those reasons, awesome. If he fulfills a projection where it's expected, even better. And then we go forward from there. But no, I mean, obviously we know these guys aren't going to play every week, even though he played the 9 in a row, and play well every week, even though Scotty Scheffler does. And Xander Schauffele seems to as well. So the rest of the field is what it is. But yeah, now that we're talking, like, there is that value of that conversation we're having about Tom Kim with 25-1. Wow, that's really tasty. Yeah. So if I was able to bet, I would definitely devote a unit to that. No doubt about
it. Quickly, one name that sticks out as you go down your power rankings, you're hitting a bunch of heavy hitters. Then we got Aaron Rai. I wouldn't necessarily call him a heavy hitter. And at the time of reading, I forgot that he won this event prior to it being co-sanctioned. So he clearly has some experience in Scotland. He's a British guy, has played well the last couple weeks. The final rounds and how he's performed in those scare me off just a bit. But what about Aaron Rai had you confident enough to kind of put him ahead of a Ludwig, put him ahead of a Tommy Fleetwood, guys that just generally off name brand alone and, what they've done, you would normally slot those guys ahead of Aaron Rai?
I know you come off the bench to pinch hit for Swanee every now and then.
Are you an Aaron Rai guy? Is this one of your guys?
Aaron Rai has been a popular conversation point throughout Talk of the Tour and then throughout my work. He has basically just been following a trajectory that has been made. He's made it very easy. Him and Davis Thompson, honestly. Davis Thompson was a topic in last week's show. I told Swanee, I'm like, I'd love to put him number 1 in the power rankings, but here are the reasons why he's not. And he won at number 3 in the power rankings. I think Rai was 4th. I mean, these guys are just doing what they expected. And a guy like Rai, though, when he's on form, which he always is from tee to green, this is his profile. If he's sinking putts, he's basically unbeatable. And he has been beaten. Obviously, he's not a PGA Tour winner yet. He has been beaten by a few guys, but not many. And so, like, the quote unquote head-to-head percentage is way up there, in the 90s, in the high 90s in the last few starts for him. The fact that he's won on this course before is a real bonus right now. But even if he was a debutant, he'd be in the power rankings somewhere, probably lower but somewhere because of this trend. Also a guy chasing that victory, but he's comfortable right now in terms of everything. He's already figured out in terms of playing the PGA Tour full-time, guy in his prime. But it's the ball striking that keeps his game afloat. We see this time and again, and we just needs that hot week with the putter. When he won this thing, I think it was 18 under, and it was a par 71 at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Scoring probably will not be that low this week. I mean, it would be an upset if it was, let's say, 12 under. Still not necessarily crazy high or difficult, but he has also been able to present the fact that he's comfortable on harder tracks as well. So he's not just a one-trick pony who happens to be in a groove. He's much more. There's much more depth to this guy. You had mentioned that the heavy hitters. Hey, he wears 2 gloves. He's ready to come at you, man. So he's prepared before sticks that first peg in the ground.
All right, Rob, before we get you out of here, I want to just briefly touch on ISCO. Mostly just to touch back on kind of the youth movement is going over that way. Luke Clanton making his 3rd start, trying to go for that 3rd straight top 10, which would be remarkable. Michael Theo Bjornsson's in the field. He was almost under talked about, I think, coming out of last week just because of what Clanton did, that in one of his first pro starts, he also gets a runner-up. We have Neil Shipley back in this field. So all those young guys that have performed well over the last month are in ISCO in Kentucky this week, and Clanton was the betting favorite, which was remarkable to see. When it after the shock and awe, it made sense just when you look at how he's played. Yeah. But that is just remarkable that an amateur that we've really only seen for 3 weeks is the betting favorite in a PGA Tour event, albeit an additional event, still a tour event with tons of KFT guys, tons of pro guys fighting for their jobs, and we got this amateur that might be the favorite this week. It's truly like unprecedented stuff that's happening in ISCO.
My takeaway with Clanton and the fact that he was the favorite on the betting board is I wonder if that would still be the case if Nick Dunlap didn't win the American Express earlier this year as an amateur. Yeah, he's already set a precedent that hadn't been done, in a long time, and
39 years, I believe. Yeah,
right. And so Clanton is on the precipice of making it 2 in the last 28 events on the PGA Tour. He's number 2 in the power rankings. Honestly, just to totally go off the rails for interest this week, the one guy that I wanted to slot into the power rankings, but I'm just respectful of the guys who do this every week. They're professional golfers, even though Clanton isn't yet. It's John Marshall Butler. J.M. Butler beat Clanton in the final of the NCAA Men's Division I Championship for the title. He also beat Neil Shipley in the semifinals of that match play. Butler is from Louisville, went to high school at Trinity in Louisville. This isn't necessarily a home game, but it's local enough. He's going to have so much support, and he's really, really good. Had he splashed earlier in like the last 3 weeks of maybe these easier tracks, he probably would have been on much lower on the betting board. I haven't actually looked to see where he is yet because I told you I don't look at these things quite early in the week. But he's the one who's captured my attention the most in terms of the next guy of this next class. I don't know if it's a class yet. We'll see. It's probably too soon to call it a class. Yeah. But that's the name. Keep an eye on that guy, J.M. Butler.
See, this is why Rob does this every week, and I only fill in. I had no J.M. Butler takes prepared.
Yeah, what's your opinion on J.M. Butler?
Don't set me up to fail, Rob.
Right,
but I will have said if I'm on the J.M. Butler podcast before he goes on and wins, I will claim some part of that from
there. You go.
Just because I was here. But that was a full.
It's not about me,
Rob Bolton.
It's about you. Yeah. I said that earlier.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us this week. Double events means double the coverage in some ways. We'll have you all covered on PGATour.com. Rob's got stuff up there. I've got stuff up there. Rob, appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, pal.